Chase Thomas the Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of A Pod Divided here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ down there in Tequila, Georgia. My good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is it's good to be back here with you.
Oh, not a lot here. Not a lot from Matt. No follow-up. Just I didn't even do the whole thing. I could have done the whole Everything School bit for you. I mean, another big win on the road at Alabama.
I thought we could just get into Tennessee, man. Are they gonna be a 1 seed? Are they that good? I'm still a casual college basketball fan. Like I'm watching Georgia some still, but I'm still a casual college basketball guy.
Well, I think it depends. Like, it's just, we talked about it on the Tennessee Ball Sports Guys earlier, and I think Arizona still has the edge right now, barely. But Tennessee might need some help. But also, if Tennessee ends up going 4-0 in these final 4 games against 4 top 25 teams in the SEC, and with the SEC being so much deeper in the Pac-12, which is where Arizona's coming in just a really, really bad conference this season on the basketball front. I don't know. I think if Tennessee wins out, I think they have a strong possibility, but they got to take care of business against Kentucky and get a win against South Carolina, and then we'll see. 3-1. And if Arizona finishes out with 2 dubs against UCLA and USC, seems unlikely, but I don't know. I hope that's the case. I think Tennessee's one of the 4 best teams. I think they've earned it, but I don't know what's ultimately going to happen here. But it seems like the narrative nationally is that Tennessee is going to need some help down the stretch here to surpass Arizona, fair or not. But we'll see. There's still a lot of basketball left to be played, and Arizona could get upset one more time, and who knows what might happen. We'll see. But either way, I mean, baseball, Rockin' Ting, they rolled Bowling Green every single game this weekend. So that was cool. Georgia, though, had some fun over the weekend against Tech, I saw.
Yeah, Georgia sweep Tech, is that right?
I think so, yeah. But there was something weird. I don't know if they finished the game or picked back up on Friday, because I know it got called off. I don't know if it was weather. I think it was weather related, right? Tech and Georgia. And y'all did something cool, which I think more universities should adopt, like all across the board, which is, I don't know if you saw like how they mapped out the home locations for the weekend, but they did Friday, I think, in Athens, or Friday at Tech, Saturday in Athens, and then Sunday at a neutral site. Did they play at Coolray? I think they played at
Truist.
It was either Truist or Coolray, one of the two. But I like that. Like, you do a home and home, and then like one cool big MLB park for your rival over the weekend. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's like years ago when the Yankees and Mets did the Subway Series, like doubleheader, same day in 2 different stadiums.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's a cool gimmick.
I think more people should do that. I think that's fun. Little things to make these weekend series fun. But, we have all the time in the world to talk college basketball and college baseball. But we're not going to do it on this very show, Matt Graham. We have other things to talk about. We have things like college football, because college football never sleeps, sir, as you well know. More rule changes coming down the pike here. And I wanted to kick things off because I think this is actually, I'm surprised that it hasn't happened. You know how some of these rule changes, you're like, the one that I don't see how anyone could be dismissive of or not a fan of is what came down the pike this past week, Matt Green. I want to get your perspective on this. The 2-minute warning. Like, it's just one of those things where you're like, I'm actually kind of surprised that has not already been added to college football, but it's a fun deal. And I like the line of demarcation with the 2-minute warning, where we get that sound, obviously, stadium going nuts because you get ready for a final drive. There's already a lot of intensity when it comes to the final minute or two of so many big time college football games. And I just think adding the 2-minute warning just adds another layer of just intensity to some of these game winning drives. And I think it's fun. I think it's a net win, but the face you're making here on youtube.com/Chase Thomas podcast, I don't think you're all the way in. Are you going the other way on the 2-minute warning, Matt Green?
Yeah, I don't see the point. As the NFL is a great sport, right? But college football is different, and I just don't want to see it become like the exact carbon copy of the NFL. And I think the NFL with their clock rules, the 2-minute warning makes sense. And let's be honest, they're like, wait, we can get another ad break in there at 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and do that. Obviously, that's probably what's driving this more than anything. But you just as time goes on, I want college to have their certain rules and the pros to have their certain rule. Like there's some that don't make sense, that they're different. Like the 1 foot in college and 2 feet in the pros, like that makes sense. These guys are professionals. It takes a little bit more for them to get a catch. But like the going down with no one touching you, I don't know why that rule hasn't been changed at like every classification of football, like years ago. Like if you make a diving catch and no one's around, get up and keep running. Like I've never really understood why that rule is different in the NFL versus college. But I don't know, with what we have, the clock rules in college where the clock stops, and I guess that they did change that, so it's only in the final 2 minutes. But the NFL doesn't even have that. So it seems like the NFL kind of needs that 2-minute warning more than college does with how the existing clock rules already exist.
You're telling me when you're at your Georgia game this fall, Matt Green, and the 2-minute warning dong bangs in Sanford Stadium, and let's just say, I don't even know, insert team name here. Maybe it's Tennessee. Tennessee will be in Sanford this fall. Has an opportunity to drive down the field for a game-winning drive. You're telling me you're not going to be losing your mind in the stadium because the 2-minute warning hit and the stadium's just going absolutely berserk because you know the where you're at in the game, and just there's just something nice. I don't care. I understand the NFL comparisons and trying to make everything NFL light. This is one that I just think it slaps. Like in a 2-minute warnings rock. I'm very much here for 2-minute warnings. This is a easy home run for me. I think it's just going to be awesome in the stadium.
No, and I don't have a strong stance against it. I just there's certain aspects of the college game I just like better. But we'll see. You know, I'm not as against this one. What were the other two rules they threw out?
So the other two is the helmet coach communication that looks to be instituted, which I'm more fascinated, not that it's coming into the game, but which coaches utilize it. Because I don't think every program's going to do this. I think it's more advantageous than others. And I think the way it is in the NFL is one player on each side is got the helmet communication. I don't think everybody has it. I think it's only one on each side. So one defender, usually your linebacker, your main guy here, has communication, and then the quarterback, obviously, on offense. But I'm very curious if every big time program utilizes this, because I mean, I'm interested, for instance, Tennessee with their hurry up and everything else, if they utilize it. I just think every coach and every program has a different philosophy, and it's more advantageous for some to institute the that policy. And also the other one is sideline tablets, so guys can rewatch game video from earlier in the same game. So tablets being added to the thing.
Yeah, those seem like no-brainers. Like whatever, we have the technology. Like you might as well use it.
Yeah. But we'll see. I think that will be cool. But either way, more college football changes. This is better than the running clock and stuff. Like we've had some stuff where like I don't really like this, where they ball going out of bounds on a first down, or the clock doesn't stop on a first, like that kind of stuff was tough. And you saw scoring change a little bit and how teams attacked. I mean, it affected Tennessee, obviously, this past year with tempo and everything else, and just the amount of possessions and plays that each team had. We saw plays down all across the board. So it cut into that. But I think by and large, these three, a lot of fans won't really notice by and large coming into
the no untimed down at the end of the first and third quarters. I just want to know who was watching football. I was like, this is ridiculous. These untimed downs at the end of the first and third. Just go to the other side of the field. Like I don't know who that was bothering, but sure, whatever.
Hey, whatever. Dog bites, Matt Green. What do you got this week in terms of the Georgia Bulldogs for us?
I mean, I think the biggest story this week, in the off season is the NFL Combine. Like, I think there's a lot of college football fans that really the Combine and the draft is kind of their favorite part of the NFL season, because that's when their college is kind of on display. So, like you heard, I mean, I don't know how many times they threw the logo up there, the Combine with the Michigan M, and obviously Rich Eisen, huge Michigan guy. So they had 18 guys at the combine and everything. But you saw a couple years ago with Georgia after the national championship, like how it was just a showcase of their program. But this year, I feel like the two guys that probably made the most noise from Georgia were probably Amarius Mims and Lad McConkey. Amarius Mims, I think most people that know Georgia have known this all along, and it's just lack of experience that he's only had like 1 year as a starter. But I mean, this guy listed at 6'8", 340. Like he ran a 5.07 in the 40, which doesn't even really matter. These guys aren't running 40 yards that often, but it just speaks to the freak that this guy is. I think I saw a stat that it was like 10 offensive linemen in the last like 20 years or something had run a sub like 5'1", and they were all like 310 pounds or less. And so Mims at 340, he's essentially like the Jordan Davis of the offensive line, like just a freak. And I think even though he only has a year as a starter, like with what he did at the combine, you could see, and also the shuttle I think was a big deal. Ran like a 4.27 shuttle, which was like one of the fastest ever, I think. So Amarius Mims, I think he could even crack into the top 10 just because of the physical freak that he is. I think scouts really know about him more than maybe some like mainstream fans know about him.
I always love the Mims high school video of him next to all of his peers and teammates, where he's just he's so much bigger than everybody else.
It looks like it's a freshman game, like with how much bigger he is.
Where does he compare to all-time great offensive tackles coming out of Georgia? Was he, like, by and large, for somebody who watched Mims and watched every Georgia game, like, was he a linchpin? Was there anything that concerned you about him, or that if you're an NFL team, you should be a little concerning, like in terms of Andrew Thomas, obviously comparisons there as another elite tackle who's become one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL with New York. What has it been like for Mims as the anchor for the Georgia offensive line?
Yeah, Andrew, I don't think anyone compares to Andrew Thomas. It's like there's never been a guy that just came in right away and was just a starter from day one. 3 years, like best tackle in the country, top 5 pick. Like he was just, and he had, I think, the natural progression of a lot of guys that the experienced guy, when you get there starting at left tackle, you come in, start at right tackle, and then step into the left tackle position. That's the one thing I wonder about Amarius Mims, is that he never moved over to left tackle. He only played right tackle. And you saw, I think it was, oh shoot, I'm blanking on his name now. The big dude from Rhode Island, that Truss, that would play actual left and right tackle, because they would kind of play 3 tackles each of the last 2 years, and Mims would only be at that right tackle spot. So I don't think, scouts are really worried about that, because you need a right tackle. Like left tackles tend to make more money, but I think it's still, you still just see the kind of freak this guy is. I don't think you can put him in like an all-time great Georgia like player or anything, just because he wasn't necessarily the full-time starter in 2022. And then last year he had some injuries. So you almost didn't even get one full season out of him. And you just got kind of 2 years of him in the rotation. He was obviously the starting right tackle when he was healthy, but I don't think you'd put him up there with the all-time greats or anything at Georgia, even though he is you know what kind of prospect he is. Like I'd put Broderick Jones, I think, in terms of what Broderick Jones did, like he's the same kind of just athletic, just physically gifted, but I mean he was like 310 or something. He's nowhere near the size of Amarius Mims. But I think he gave you like a full season, like big time performance in the national championship game as a sophomore against Will Anderson, and then turned it into a really good junior year and turned himself into a top, I think, 20 pick last year. So I would probably rank both Andrew Thomas and Broderick Jones ahead of Mims, just in terms of as a Georgia player.
And then, I mean, lastly, Brock Bowers, he's super interesting in terms of where he's going to ultimately end up. Like it seems like he could go all over the place, and you read different mocks, different analyses on where Brock Bowers might ultimately end up. I don't know. You've seen as high as top 5. Maybe he falls to the late first, depending on how teams value tight ends, depending on how interviews went with Brock Bowers this past week. But I don't know. Like, what do you make of Bowers' combine coverage this past week? And also, is there a team in particular that you would most like to see Bowers end up on?
For one, I'm just disappointed that he didn't run the 40 and everything, because I think, there's certain guys every year that come out and just don't have the same to prove. I mean, Marvin Harrison wasn't even at the combine, right? So, when in terms of Bowers, like, I think he is unquestioned just kind of how good he is. I just personally, as a fan, wanted to be able to put numbers. I want to be able to assign numbers to Bowers, right? Like we saw Kyle Pitts. What did he run, like a 4.35 or something like that?
Something like that.
Just an absurd time for a tight end. And you saw McConkey. Obviously, we can get to McConkey, but like he ran a 4.39. Like as a Georgia fan, the last couple of years, I think most people would say Brock Bowers is probably faster than Ladd McConkey, at least if not faster, just as fast. So I really wanted to see what kind of performance Bowers could have put up, but I think he is one of those guys. It almost feels like the point we're getting to, because he didn't work out. Like it feels like we're kind of sleeping on how good Bowers is. Like I've seen projections of him going like 18th overall and things like that after seeing like consistent top 5 projections pretty much all season. So I'm not sure. I think we know how good Bowers is. It just kind of depends on a team has to have a plan. And I don't know that Kyle Pitts, it shouldn't affect where you draft Brock Bowers, but there could be people out there looking at Kyle Pitts was a wasted top 5 pick. This guy's done nothing in what now 3 years in the NFL. And I think a lot of other people would challenge that and say he's been, underutilized. But I think a lot of it just depends. Does someone have a plan on how they want to use a weapon like Brock Bowers? And how willing are they to, maybe trade up or just spend a top 5 or top 10 pick for it? It's also kind of a luxury, to a playmaking tight end. You address other needs probably before a tight end when you're building a football team.
Yeah, and I'm just very curious. I mean, I think the Chargers would be really cool for him with Harbaugh. Saints are a good fit for him. I just don't want him to go to the Saints, and I don't want to deal with Brock Bowers in the division for twice a year for the foreseeable future. And they just brought in Clint Kubiak, who they've always prioritized tight ends in that Shanahan type offense. So you want to I think that would be a good fit for him too. But we'll see where Brock ultimately ends up. But anyway, a lot of dogs will be drafted early. Maybe Ladd McConkey in the first round too.
Dude, McConkey put on a show, man. I think running a 4.39, I don't think anyone saw that from Ladd McConkey. I think we know he's got speed, but running sub 4.4, like seeing the side-by-side comparison with Garrett Wilson and Ladd McConkey in terms of height and weight and vertical and 40, just two guys almost identical. And we know what kind of athlete Garrett Wilson is. So that's not to say McConkey's just as good, but that's a top 10 pick and a guy who's been good in his first 2 years in the NFL. But I think what's crazy to me, you also look at AD Mitchell. When you look at that 2021 University of Georgia just team that has at this point in the last 2 classes had 8 first-round draft picks. Like you look at this 2024 draft, like Brock Bowers and Marius Mims could both be first rounders. Maybe John Bullard, maybe Kamari Lassiter. Ladd McConkey could be getting the first round, and AD Mitchell. I mean, this guy ran a 4.35. Like he's also a big time member of that 2021 team, and that's not even counting like George Pickens and Nakobe Dean and James Cook, who's already been good in his second year in the NFL. Like. So that 2021 team, like we talk about how loaded the defense was, but now you're looking at that offense could potentially have about 4 first rounders on it in terms of 2 offensive linemen and a couple of playmakers. I mean, maybe more. I don't know that McConkey actually goes in the first round. I would still be surprised at that just because I think it's a pretty loaded receiver class. Like you'd have to have like 8 first rounders or something for McConkey to go first round, right? Like, is he a top 5 receiver in this class?
You know what's funny? His measurables are almost exactly Eddie Royal's. I saw so Trevor Sikkema had that comp, and then it was a big shot call by Trevor Sikkema on that, where he like made the comp to Royal, and then they tested almost identical. Like their measurables and everything is almost identical. But Mike Renner, who does Renner Ranks on the Locked On Network, formerly of PFF as well, big NFL draft guy, he had the comp of Antonio Brown. His tape reminded him of Antonio Brown in college. So Ladd, I think it does.
Someone else said, who's the film guy that does Georgia stuff.
Brooks Austin.
Yeah, he said Antonio Brown a few months back.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I think he's like someone, like if he goes to the Bills or the Chiefs, I think it's in the best interest for Ladd to be somewhere at the end of the first round. Because I think if he lines up, like you can easily see the Chiefs utilizing somebody like Ladd McConkey and him just flourishing in the Chiefs offense. You could also see him just flourishing with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen in Buffalo. So I think either of those two spots, if he can fall to one of those really, really good teams ready to win now that kind of need some wide receiver help, older wide receiver help, I just feel like Ladd would pencil in and just be really good right away if he can stay healthy.
No, I definitely think so. I think McConkey, he's been he kind of does everything. I think the people that don't really know about him, look at a white guy and he's like, oh, he's going to be a nice little slot receiver. It's like, no, this guy's a deep threat. Like, I always wondered why he didn't return punts more at Georgia. He seems like he would have that ability and his shiftiness. He's a big yards after catch guy. So, I think he could definitely be a player at the next level. I just look at, like, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., who Brian Thomas, now Xavier Worthy setting the record for the NFL record for the 40-yard dash. Like that had to do something for Xavier Worthy. He definitely has some first round potential at this point. Roma Dunze, like Xavier Leggett, like there's so many dudes that I feel like could go first round. I don't know that McConkey is still in that group, but I mean, I at the same time, I think he's going to be a good player.
I agree. Matt Green, switching gears here a little bit. Good look or bad look for you? Shane Beamer publicly talking about James Coley's departure to the Dawgs, becoming the wide receiver coach at Georgia after being briefly the wide receiver coach at South Carolina. Beamer having to make 2 wide receiver coach hires now this offseason. But the way he talked about it, of like it saving South Carolina some money to go out and get a better coach in Mike Fury, who is mostly an NFL guy, not a lot of college ties. So we'll see how he does in the recruiting trail. Obviously, a lot of experience as an NFL longtime receiver and then as an assistant coach. But I thought this was certainly a choice. It was one of those where you see like the clickbait stuff on it, and then you're like, it's probably sensationalized. And then you watch it and you're like, I don't think that is what I would have done in that situation. I probably wouldn't have said all that out loud, and that seemed a little unnecessary. What did you make of Shane Beamer's comments just on the wide receiver debacle in South Carolina this offseason?
Well, I'll start by saying I feel for Shane Beamer, because this is why this coaching carousel just kind of sucks. It's continuing. We're into March, and it's just there's still spots to be filled and everything. So I feel him on that, because I think South Carolina getting James Coley, like that's a big time guy to get as a wide receiver coach for South Carolina, and a big brother, just kind of flexed on you like, oh, we want that. We're gonna go ahead and take that from you, and that's what Georgia did. So I can understand the frustration, but I feel like time and time again, the more Shane Beamer kind of talks, the more he just kind of, he shouldn't have said that. Like it's like when a fan has an opinion, it's like, okay, you think you want the coach to say what the opinions the fan has until the coach actually says it, and you're like, oh wow, he kind of sounds like he's whining a little bit. This is just like, oh, we're glad we actually got a better coach for less money. So, good. It's like, oh, okay, man. Like, you obviously wanted him on your staff. You get it. Like, Georgia's a better opportunity for him. So he went there. Like, you get what it is. So I don't know. It just comes off as whiny every time he goes on these little kind of rants.
And to add the full picture here, he said, quote, I don't think I didn't think we'd be here again introducing a wide receivers coach, and this speaks to what you're saying. It is what it is. The previous receivers coach made a decision that he felt was best for his family. We collected the $450,000 and then some that we were owed for violating or leaving his contract. It allowed us to go out and hire an even better wide receivers coach in my mind. I mean, it's the second part that was just not necessary. They were coaches together on Smart staff, where he was wide receivers coach, and I think Beamer was tight ends coach for a couple of years together. So I mean, this seems like I don't know. I'm surprised that it came out of, especially about Coley, because it seemed like they've known each other for a long time, and maybe it just stung a little bit more that he went back to Georgia this late in the calendar or whatever. But this is something I didn't really understand. And then the whole even better receivers coach. I mean, I don't know. It just is odd to say that publicly. It just did not come off, I'm sure, the way many South Carolina fans or maybe even Beamer, after listening back to it, would have hoped, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just kind of cringe, like not to be a millennial over here, but I don't know. You don't want your coach talking like that. You don't want your coach to be bothered by anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, you can tell he's bothered by that.
And all you got to say is like, hey, we wish James Coley the best. Worked with him a long time, part of the process, but we feel confident in who we got to replace him. We're excited about Mike Ferry joining our staff. Like, that's the way around it. Like, you don't actually have to do it saved us money, and we use that money to upgrade. Like, I don't know. It's very strange to throw that out there, I think, publicly, to somebody like Coley on the way out that you have a lot of history with. Matt Green, SEC 2023 season review series continues on. Florida, Matt Green. Obviously not the season that they wanted in 2023. We got Spurrier now entering the public conversation about the Florida Gators and where they're at as a program this week. But Matt Green, what did you make of the 2023 Gators? When you look at their schedule and what ultimately ended up happening, was it about right based on the personnel and everything else that you had thought of coming into the year? Did they overachieve, underachieve, or was it right where they should have been based on everything else?
That's really, when you phrase the question that way, it's a really interesting question, because what were they preseason win total, like 5.5?
Something like that. Yeah.
They were right there at 5-7. I think because of the Arkansas game, that feels like the one game that you're just like, that was kind of unacceptable. You lost to Arkansas at home, like their one SEC win the entire season. Like, that would have put them in a bowl game. I think the entire perception of maybe you even win a bowl game. I think the entire perception of the program could be different right now if you win that Arkansas game. It's like the starting 5-2. Like, let's not forget, like, the game in Jacksonville actually meant something. Like, that was actually like something on the line. They were 5-2, like 3-1 or something in the SEC. Maybe it was only 2. Yeah, 3-1, 4-1 in the SEC, I think, coming in. So their season, it actually looked like they were playing for something, and then to lose 5 in a row to end the year, not make a bowl game. There's something about bad and then like not making the bowl game bad. Like, usually, like, December comes and your season's over. It's one thing to be playing a bowl game on December 23rd, but it's another to just not be playing one at all.
Yeah, and I mean, they ended on a 5-game losing streak.
Yeah,
which is tough. But look, the Utah game caught a lot of folks by surprise. That one just looked ugly. There was a lot of miscommunication, a lot of errors in that Utah game, and you lose to Utah without Cam Rising, obviously, and you just felt like you should have had a better performance out of the gate there with 11 points on the road at Utah. But you also beat Tennessee at home, big win. So you get over the Tennessee hump there for Billy Napier after losing year one. It's a big win. You win at South Carolina. That's a big one. You get drubbed at Kentucky. That was tough because Kentucky is one where they're just starting to have your number a little bit. Like, it's one thing to lose to Kentucky if you're Florida every now and then, but there's a reason that you had this one of the longest streaks. Like, what was it? Didn't they have the longest just head-to-head winning streak against
Kentucky? It was like 35 in a row or something like that.
There's a reason that it was that long. And for it to kind of just go the way. And I understand Kentucky is the strongest it's been in our lifetime, and Marcus Stoops has got a good program there. But you still have better players every time you're going up against Kentucky. You should not be losing to Kentucky as much as you've lost to Kentucky of late. And that last year's team wasn't a juggernaut. And for you to struggle the way you did and to lose in that game, it was just kind of a really deflating loss. But you bounce back. I mean, no one's going to hate you for getting blown out by Georgia. The rough one to me, because the final three, I mean, LSU, Missouri, and Florida State were all top 10 teams by the end of the year. Like, those are all respectable losses. The one that stinks is and this was the difference in a bowl game, was Arkansas. You can't lose to a bad Arkansas team at home. That was the one where you're like, oh no, that's one you just got to have. And I think we look at this offseason just a little bit differently if they go to the bowl game and they have that home loss, that home victory, because outside of that one in the Kentucky game, I mean, that's about where they should have been in year 2 for Billy Napier, right?
Yeah, because I don't even think the Kentucky loss is bad. Like, at Kentucky, like, there is some, like, it's
you just
used as like
Kentucky. You're Florida.
It's used as like trolling online, but the whole Super Bowl conversation. But there are like Super Bowl vibes when Florida comes into Kentucky, right? Like, that kind of is the big game Kentucky thinks they can win. So there's something about the atmosphere, and obviously the game got turned on its head, I think, in like a 4 or 5 minute period. But you look at like that South Carolina game, like that was one of those wins that felt like a character building win at the time, like, because they had to have the last minute drive to come back and win that one. And so to win that, and now it looks like once you're looking at a 5-7 season, you're like, well, we went 5-7 and shoot, we barely even beat South Carolina. Like, it could have been 4-8. Like, I think it's looked at from more of a negative lens. And I mean, like you said, the Missouri game was still close too. Like, they could have won that game. So that one took a last second win for Missouri. So they were very close to being in a bowl game. I just don't know how many positive fans there can be of Billy Napier right now. Like, I know it's not all his fault. He didn't inherit a good program, but 2 years in, 2 back-to-back losing records, like, his seat just has to be on fire right now.
Matt Green, they've lost 3 straight to Kentucky, which you just can't. You just can't if you're Florida. Also, before they lost in 2018, before that, the last time they lost to Kentucky was 1986.
Yeah, it's but in fairness, Kentucky is a completely different program. Like, Kentucky, the last 10 years is better than it's ever been, like, in history.
That's
so
fine.
I think,
I mean, Tennessee has
Florida,
had
this
that.
is probably the worst 10-year run that Florida has had in the last 40 years.
I mean, that's all true, but Tennessee's still beating Kentucky every year. It's one of those where it's like, this is a solid Kentucky program. And like I said, like, Kentucky is solid, but Tennessee is still beating Kentucky every year with good teams. Sometimes in blowouts, but
for sure.
I don't know.
No, it's definitely not good. It's not good to be losing to Kentucky, but it's just hard to, like, when I look at their season, as like, I was got blasted in that game. I don't look at that as being one of like the bad losses. As
but,
weird as
like, imagine high school Matt. Like, I'm high school Matt, and I'm telling you, hey, in the future, Kentucky might beat Florida. An entire Florida class might go 0 for 4 against Kentucky in your lifetime. You would have been no way.
Is that right? They've lost 3 in a row?
Yes.
That's wild. Yeah, that is just kind of unacceptable.
No, I mean, it just is. Like, you're just Florida. That's like one of those where it's like, I don't know, man. You gotta win those.
It's definitely the Arkansas loss. That was like just the how can you do that?
100%.
Like, that team couldn't score any points at all, and they came in and dropped 39 in the swamp. I think there was a pick 6 in that.
It was ugly,
but yeah, it was.
Yeah, but then outside of that, you look at it and you're like, I just feel like if Napier doesn't make it through, I'm like, look at the schedule the last 2 years and the losses. I mean, who did you want him to beat, really? Like, who on this schedule do you feel you're like, Florida should be like 8-4, 9-3? I'm like, who do you have? I mean, just where they are as a program. I don't know.
So, Charlie Strong, he got fired after 3 years, right, at Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And did Tom Herman, did he get 3 or did he get 4 years?
It's a good question.
He
I feel
may
like
have
he
gotten
got
a
longer.
4th year. But I don't know. Like, I even feel for Billy Napier right now
He got 4.
Okay, so looking at this 2024 schedule, like we know McElwain. McElwain was a weird situation. He only got a couple years. Muschamp got like 4 years. He at least had one good season in there. McElwain won the East twice. Mullen really had the one bad season and got fired. With 3 straight, even with the landscape of college football in the SEC changing, like there is, like Georgia becoming the number 1 program in the country, like that has to be taken into account, right? Like, okay, this isn't losing to Georgia in 2016. It's not the same thing. You know what I mean? So you just look at what the SEC has become. It's become tougher for Florida. So the expectations on Florida should be lower than they once were. But if you go 3 straight years without making a bowl game, I don't know what kind of like improvement you can possibly show, like moral victory type stuff to survive 3 straight losing seasons. Like I just don't see that.
I don't either, but it's toughest schedule in college football next year. The Florida Gators.
Like if they start 1-5, is that like a good thing? And then they finish 6-6 or something, like, or 5-7
is 1-5 is uncharted waters. I mean,
if they start, but if they show improvement, like that's the only way that they show improvement down the stretch. Does that make you feel good? Well, honestly, if they went like 5-7 5-2 down the stretch, they're gonna play like top 15 teams.
I was gonna say the back half. So, folks,
games.
Their final 5 is ridiculous. Their final 5, actually, let's just say this: their final 7, Matt Green, at Tennessee, or Kentucky at home, bye, Georgia at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss at FSU. I mean, you're hoping for 2 best case scenario there.
No, if they start 1-5, they're gonna win 2 games. It'll be the worst season of all time. But yeah, this is absurd. I've never seen a schedule this difficult. I don't think ever watching college football. Like this could be the best Ole Miss team we ever see. Like honestly, like this could be the best Ole Miss team of all time. Texas is going to be really good. Georgia's going to be really good. LSU is always good. Like to have like those could be four top 10 teams you're facing in October and November. Like that's just and I think Florida fans should recognize that. And so I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take, it's going to take like feelings. There's that whole thing like people don't remember like what you say, they just remember how you make them feel or something. It's winning some of these rivalry games that just means something, having some good moments to celebrate along the way. That's the only way. Just like some good feelings, like upsetting Georgia or something, beating Texas in Austin. Like it's going to take beating Florida State or something, like winning a rivalry game, like Tennessee. Like it's going to take winning 1, maybe 2 rivalry games that just kind of at least make you feel good after a 5-7 season. Because I'm not sure how it's possible for this team to make a bowl game. Like even if they are improved from a year ago, 6 wins just seems like such a task. And they don't even have those cupcakes. Like they have the Samford, and then the second easiest game on their schedule is who? UCF? Like Miami? Like Miami, they're one of your picks to be a dark horse, potentially ACC champion next year. We're not even we haven't even mentioned Miami at this point. So like that's another team that's a potential top 10, top 15 caliber team that they're going to have to face next year. Like it's just, even if this was a good team, like if Georgia was facing this schedule, like you might predict 2 or 3 losses. Like it's that big of it's that much of a gauntlet.
100%. Matt Green, switching gears here as we continue on our over-under betting win totals here in the early part of March, sir. Big 12, this week on the docket, and we'll hit Big Ten next week. But when you look at the over-unders for the Big 12, what number is the most shocking to you when you look at all the different over-unders in the conference?
I don't have it pulled up in front of me. Let me pull up. You start. Give me your numbers to start on.
So there's a lot to like here. I think what's super interesting to me that jumps out across the board, and like they're ranked ahead of them right now. They're ranked ahead of Tennessee. Arizona is 8.5. They had a breakthrough year. They keep Noah Fertitta. Is it for Noah Fertitta? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Fafita, I believe.
What is it?
I think it's
Fafita. Fafita, yeah. He's really good, and they found something with him. He stays. He doesn't make the jump to UW and all that. Brennan, I think he might be okay. I'm not the biggest just jump up and down guy for that hire. I think Jed Fish did a really good job, and we know in years past that is a very, very tough job and a very, very tough place to win historically. I don't like that 8.5. So they jump out the most to me is what was Brennan's record at San Jose State? It was not what you would think it was when he's coming in, because Brent Brennan, he went 34-48 as a head coach. 7-6, 7-5, 5-7, 7-1 in the 2020 COVID year, 5-7. He might be okay. Maybe. He hasn't won 8 games as a head coach yet. And now you move into the Big 12, more of a deeper conference, more opportunities there. I mean, obviously Texas and Oklahoma leave the conference. So that helps things. That's one that jumped out to me out of the gate that I would probably run away from. I don't think Arizona's an 8-9 win team. So seeing them in like the 14th, 15th ranked, I don't think they finished the season ranked. I think they fall back to the mean, and they're more of a 7-6 win team, best case scenario in 2024 to me.
So you're starting with what? I'm not buying their win total.
Just who you think is the most surprising. So for me, like my most surprising was Arizona, because I think that's just too high. 8.5 is near the top of the conference, and I just don't think they're near the top this year.
Yeah, it's with the Big 12 next year. It's hard to know who's going to be at the top of this conference. It feels like the most wide open conference in college football. Like 9.5 is the highest win total, right? We got Kansas State and Utah at 9.5. Like I would say, yeah, those are two teams any given year. Yeah, you feel good about them winning 10 games, but you wouldn't be surprised at all if they won less. So I think UCF is one that I wouldn't say they're necessarily surprising to me, but UCF is one that, like, it's just interesting to see them, kind of at the top of the Big 12. Like they're at the top of a quote unquote power conference right now. It's just a long way that this program has come.
No, I like the UCF one. 8.5 is kind of shocking to see. KJ Jefferson comes into the fold from Arkansas for his final collegiate year. Gus Malzahn wins a lot of football games. They're obviously recruiting extremely well at the top of the conference. I like that one for just, people are going to gravitate, I think, naturally to the staple that is Kansas State. You've seen them win the Big 12 with this administration. They're going to be good this year. But Utah, I think, will always get some love there, and we'll talk about Utah in a second. But I think, like, probably the best sneaky, like, most realistic Big 12 champ is UCF. I like that one. I think UCF's going to be really good. And final KJ Jefferson year down there to get a chance to reset. I think I like the UCF poll there.
Yeah, I think they're also probably an answer to your second question of the best buy now candidate. UCF does feel like, just because KJ Jefferson, I don't know, are we doing this again with KJ Jefferson? Like, it feels like we fall in love with him every offseason, because you look at him, you're just like, this guy, he should be really good. And he was really good for 2 years in the SEC, but he last year he just was not the same guy. You got to think, playing against different competition in a Gus Malzahn offense, like has found a way to utilize dual threat quarterbacks. You got to have hopes that he could be maybe the best quarterback in this conference next year.
And I mean, they were 25th in pass defense this past year nationally. This is a pass happy conference. I think that's important. I think they're going to have the bodies and the dudes on both sides of the ball. I like that. I think they might be a sneaky. That's a good pull. I would hit the over right now on UCF. So we'll see. I think people, especially if they beat Florida early in the season, they're going to get some buzz pretty early on here for the Knights and the Big 12. Who is the hardest to get a feel for when you look at this? Who's just like, I don't know about that, or I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other because I have no read on them in March.
Man, I feel like I would say that about half of this conference. Like you just look at all of the 6.5s and 5.5s, and you're the BYU's and Houston's and these type of teams. Like, man, I just Texas Tech or something like that. Like Oklahoma State, seeing them down at 7.5. Like you would have to, like you told me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, Texas and Oklahoma are leaving the Big 12. Who's the biggest beneficiary of that? It's Oklahoma State, without a doubt. Like I would think, oh, Oklahoma State's running that. They're going to get to college football playoffs. They're going to be a contender now. Like to see them in the middle of the conference, like I have no idea what to expect from Oklahoma State. And obviously, I didn't even mention Baylor, like Dave Aranda. Like they could be looking for a new coach next offseason as well.
Yeah, it's a big year for Dave Aranda. I think he brings in Jake Spavital as his new OC, so they change gears, more run and gun, more air raid this year than what they ran with Grimes and company over the last couple, and being more of a ground heavy team. So I'm interested to see how that works for Baylor, but we shall see. I think Baylor. For me, BYU, that 4.5 is kind of like, I don't know what to think about that. That it takes some getting used to. The one that I just don't have a feel for, 4.5 for Houston. You mentioned them. Willie Fritz is a damn good football coach. And I'm going to hit the over always. Like with Willie Fritz, that guy overachieves wherever he goes. I understand he's on the older side. But Houston's, there's a lot of talent there. He's not walking into a terrible situation. I would probably lean towards the over. I don't know if they go bowling in year one for Willie Fritz down there in Houston, but he's one I would just probably ride with, like in terms of the new Big 12 teams and stuff and how he'll acclimate and everything else. And he's built a good staff there right out of the gate. I would probably lean towards Willie Fritz being pretty solid right away. So I think he could do better in 4-8 his freshman or his year one in Houston.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. And like you said with a minute ago, like Arizona is a really hard one to feel for. Like we saw with those AAC teams new to the Big 12, like there weren't many that had success like going in last year. It's kind of interesting with now the Pac-12 teams coming into the Big 12, like, what we're going to see out of some of these. So we haven't even mentioned Colorado yet, right? Like they were the darling of college football last year. It's like this team. What are they sitting at? Like 6.5? Was that
last year or right now?
Or yeah, what is theirs right now?
Theirs is 5.5.
5.5. Yeah, it's like, and this is a team like we saw the buzz they created last year. Like, I think they're going to see worse competition in the Big 12 than they did in the Pac-12. But to what extent? Are they competing for the conference at the end of the year? I don't know if I'm ready to say anything like that.
Colorado is an interesting one. Like 5.5. I mean, you're not going bowling. Like you go 2 years, a lot of excitement. You have a lot of top end guys. You get Jordan Seaton in the fold. You have Travis Hunter, who should have another great year. Shedeur should be awesome. You have Cormani McClain still. Let's see if he factors in at the other cornerback spot. Like you have some big time top. And also, the thing that Colorado did this offseason, like I thought the Sean Kelly stuff was weird, the offensive coordinator stuff when firing him midseason, and now he's the head coach at San Diego State and all that. And I thought that was handled a little strange. Now Pat Shurmur, who has a lot of NFL experience, running more of the pro style stuff for the Buffs going into next year. But they built a great staff. Like this staff that Colorado still has, like Deion's hiring really well. Like that's something that has to be talked about here. Is I'm curious when that starts to pay dividends, because like say what you want about Deion and everything else, but the dude hires really well, and the 2024 staff is really good. Like, you're gonna have like Robert Livingston is a good defensive coordinator hire. Jason Phillips is a wide receiver coach, is a good hire. Phil Lodeholt is a good hire. But I don't know. It's just interesting that you go through who he brought in, and he's assembled a staff. Like, it's a strong staff, and there's still a lot of top end talent. Shador is the best quarterback in the conference. Travis Hunter, best all around player. I don't know. Like, Colorado, like you said, the biggest thing is the conference is a little bit easier. And there's a little bit more talent. They're a little bit steadier. You know what you're getting more a little bit. Year two with Dion in Boulder, but I don't know. I might be leaning more towards the over in early March for Colorado. I think Shador is still just gonna be really good, and I think the schedule will be a little bit better for the Buffs.
It is one of the more difficult schedules in the Big 12 next year. So there is that. And like they do have at Nebraska, who could be better in year two as well. And obviously it's a big rivalry game. So it's not going to be easy in terms of Big 12, but I think it's got to be easier than that schedule that had Oregon on it a year ago and some of those teams out in the Pac-12.
And I mean, there's no love lost with how Colorado State went last year, and now you got to go there. Like you said, you go to Nebraska. You get Baylor at home, that'll be good. At UCF will obviously be hard. You get Kansas State at home, which is big. And then just the one just hanging around, it's like Cincinnati. Like, I don't even know what to do with. Like, Cincinnati does not feel like a Big 12 team. There's no juice right now with the Bearcats whatsoever, and it's like 5.5 for them. And I'm like, I don't know. It just. Not a lot of juice for the Bearcats post Luke Fickell.
Hey, and you got that North Dakota State game in the opener. It could be
mean,
dangerous. Could they upset them?
Maybe. Does it feel like to you though? 9.5. Utah, is that your like Cam Rising back for his like 13th year of college football? Does that feel right? As the winners for the first year in the Big 12.
Yeah, they feel like a safer bet than Kansas State. Like, but those do seem like the two teams that they feel like the safest programs to bet on in 2024. So Utah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. We're talking about the competition level. Like, they're definitely going to be a big beneficiary of that. Like, they could be the best program. Like, if you're ranking just the best programs right now in college football, like you'd probably put, or in the Big 12, you'd probably put Utah number 1, right?
Yeah, I mean they're up there somewhere. I think too for Utah. You know what's funny is I kind of like the ball lovers, the actual football like ground and pound like physical style. Kansas State, Utah would slap in the Big 12 title game. Like, that's just two mashing teams, two very physical. Like, we're gonna grind this out and make it as ugly as possible. Like, we're Chris Kleiman versus Kyle Whittingham is gonna be 20-17 and ball control, and I don't know. It's going to be funny because like the rest of the conference isn't really going to play like that, but Utah and Kansas State just might pulverize everybody playing the style they want to play.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I think Utah is Cam Rising. Like, he's a good player last time we saw him play. So seeing him back, that should, he might not be the best quarterback in the Big 12, but I think you know what you're getting, and he's just going to be a solid quarterback that you don't have to worry about.
No, 100%. Well, that's all I've got tonight, Matt Green. Big Ten next week. More combine, more draft stuff. Who knows? They might pass some more rules while we're away here. You never know. In the college football landscape, more coaching changes. You never know in that regard. But by and large, more college football down the pike. We'll have all kinds of great coverage and all kinds of great stuff to talk about here in the offseason. Spring practice right around the corner, and we'll start to get a better picture of depth charts and all that good stuff. But until next week, thank you as always, my friend, and I will talk to you very soon.